It looks like it's slowed down a bit, so I'm going to go ahead and get the call started. James is actually out on vacation this week, so I'm going to be helping with running the call. The focus for today is going to be on the childcare industry and how it affects economic development and just general business growth in the Seacoast. Today as our guest speaker, we have Grassie from Rochester Child Care Center, who is also a member of the executive board of the New Hampshire Advisory Council, Childcare Advisory Council. Anne is here to speak to us about the issues facing the childcare industry and the struggles/realities of trying to stay in business. And after Anne's presentation, hopefully as part of the larger conversation with the group, we can explore some possible solutions to affordable childcare and how businesses and employers might be able to collaborate to tackle some of the struggles that Anne is going to talk to us about. Before over to Anne, I just wanted to mention that we have a couple of guest attendees on the call that I'd like to point out. Both of whom have a lot of expertise. For putting you both on the spot. One of them is going to be. Sorry about that. Alyssa, she joined us for a call a few months ago. She works at the Global Partners Division for CCA for Social Good and is also a part-time advisor, if I'm not mistaken, for Early Learning New Hampshire. And we have Jen, and I'm sorry if I mess up your last name. Is it Legier?
Legier.
Okay. Yeah, Jen is from A Place to Grow. She recently partnered with the Randolphs to open a child care center in Harmony Homes in Durham, and was also named the 2022 New Hampshire Women-Owned Business of the Year by the SBA. So as I said before, we have a lot of great expertise around the childcare industry with us today. After Anne's presentation, and this goes to everybody, please feel free to jump into the conversation with any thoughts, ideas, or just general comments as we go. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Anne.
Thank you so much for having us here today. I've got my executive director, Cora Hoppy, here as well at Rochester Child Care Center. And I guess I don't have so much of a presentation as I do to just inform about the struggles that the business of childcare has. You know, we're the workforce behind the workforce. So when we're in trouble, a lot of people are in trouble. They can't work if they can't have childcare. The struggles for a small business during COVID and after, I think it made us all aware of how dependent we are on our pillars of support in order to have industry work. You know, you have to have a workforce. You have to have people who can be at work. Even the schools had trouble being at work. It was a nightmare that no one saw coming. And it's pointed out the struggles of childcare even more. We were in trouble before COVID. The workforce issue has been an issue for many years, and we've struggled with how to hire and keep good help. One of our issues is around quality in the childcare. You want high quality early childhood experiences for children because that's a benefit to families, it's a benefit to schools, it's a benefit to everyone. Having high quality means a well-paid workforce, and that's a difficult thing to do when your industry relies on fees and parent fees and young parent fees, which means they can't afford the real cost of childcare, the true cost of childcare if you're paying your staff sufficient. We've learned that educating our staff it's a two-edged knife. You have a good quality childcare instructor in the classroom when you help them become educated, but you also set them up to be swiped from you by the school system because they're perfect for a paraprofessional and a lead into the educational system. So we lose when we educate our workforce. Offering benefits to keep them. You know, I always said that if you want to keep the staff in childcare, you really have to be offering them a lot of perks. It has to have a lot of ability to have time off, ability to have health care, ability to have personal growth. And what benefit that we like to offer that's almost impossible now is free childcare for childcare workers. That's a struggle too. Some of them in the past, I can remember training assistants. You know, every 2 months I'd have a new assistant in my school age group because she couldn't afford to stay with us because the childcare costs too much for her. It's an industry like no other. We don't produce widgets. You know, we get kids ready for school, and we provide a safe place so parents can work and their minds can be at rest knowing their children are in a safe place. And we have a workforce that pays attention to the development of children, which I don't know if the world really understands how important those first 5 years are. You know, we've done a lot of studying about brain science, and we know a lot more than we used to about little children and their needs in order to be successful human beings. And we've learned a lot about trauma and how that affects children and families. So it is a really amazing world to work in. I wouldn't work in any other. I've been in childcare I used to tell people I started in childcare when my brother was born. And I think I have always been in childcare. I was the neighborhood kid who took 12 toddlers on a walk. You know, it's just something I've always been drawn to. Little people are the best human beings, and watching them develop is amazing. I don't know if I mean, we have the typical struggles of any small business. We struggle with technology, keeping up. I mean, just having a Zoom screen in our office was not something we were used to 2 years ago. And keeping the hardware up to date is a constant battle for childcare people. Most of us work in facilities that were not designed for children, facility work. Rochester Child Care is in a school that was built for children. It was the Catholic school 50 years ago, but it's an old building, and we're starting to find issues with being in an old building. So facilities can be a struggle for most childcare. A lot of them are in basements, in churches, in substandard buildings you wouldn't consider were made for children. And that's a really sad commentary on our situation in the country today, that children aren't treated like the most valuable people in our society, which they should be. That's kind of my dump on what is going on, and it's going on across the state. It's not unique to the Seacoast area. Some of the bigger cities, Manchester, I know struggles, the childcare world struggles there. They struggle with an immigrant population that's very large. I don't know, their school district, I think, has something like 140 languages that they're dealing with on a daily basis. So that filters down into your child cares as well.
Really, though, the work in childcare has also doubled because of the amount of stress and trauma families are dealing with right now, and the loss of child care centers. For example, I don't have exact numbers, but from Wakefield to Dover, we've lost 200 slots. So now I have families really competing, and it's 50 people I have on a wait list from infants to toddlers. So it's really devastating to see what's happening. And then, you know, calling with DCYF because parents just can't manage. And, you know, we just lost a parent to a car wreck, and helping families deal with that. We have our staff, you know, we're finally getting them paid a half decent rate, which is $17 to $22 an hour for our lead teachers. But now they're getting kicked off of their health insurance. So, you know, we get 2 steps ahead and then we fall 10 steps backwards. Our industry is already tough, and now it's even tougher. And I just feel sorry for businesses and families just to have to deal with us having to shut down. For example, we had 15 staff out on Friday and on Monday, and we had to shut down, and that puts strain on families and businesses. And we're a really large organization with lots of funding from the grants right now, so we don't charge families for that, but other child care centers have to. So, you know, families are getting charged for care and not getting able to use it, which is absolutely devastating at this point. So it's like, it used to be a balancing game. Now I feel like it's a, hold on.
We got too many balls to juggle. They're all in the air. They're all in the air. So that's it. I mean, if there's any questions, we'd be glad to answer them. If there's a solution, boy, if there's ever a problem looking for a solution, this is it. And I've brought this issue to every candidate that's wanting to be elected for any position in this state. And we're lucky in this state because, you know, the presidential candidates all come here. They're starting to come here every year. It's not just every 4 years. And I bring this issue to them because I really do feel like there's a national answer here. We subsidize everything in this country. We subsidize transportation. We subsidize gas and oil. We subsidize dairy, and it is even good for us. Why can't we subsidize early childhood care and education for families? This would be such a boon to everyone. And so you know, in a small state like New Hampshire, where we struggle to pay for regular education, I can't see us footing the bill for preschool or even universal child care. But on a national level, this could be a solution, and we need more people talking about it.
We're very fortunate in the state that we have lots of creative forces in our industry, and it's not a competitive industry. We could all work together to apply many different approaches: center-based, in-home care, micro centers. We have some of the top people here to help businesses connect with the right people in order to make this work. Because our state isn't investing in it, this doesn't make this, you guys have the opportunity to invest in it still. So we could be here to help with that.
Open to questions.
Any questions, Robin? And then I have Jackie.
It's not really a question, but I just want to say thank you. And I want to be a mom for a second, and a mom who's happened to, for whatever it's worth, traveled a lot internationally once a week for over 11 years. And I think where we lose perspective as Americans, truthfully, is on many issues, but as a point of reference and context, in France, public school starts at age 3. I don't know about the rest of Western Europe, but I can tell you in France, public school starts at age 3. And virtually every other industrialized democracy in the world does treat daycare as part of the public school education system. And I have no answers. I just want to say thank you. And I think that this is just a huge issue, and I just don't understand why it is so neglected as a priority.
And what a valuable resource. It was childcare who saved me. It wasn't, my husband made too much money. We never qualified for anything, but Rochester Child Care helped me and helped pay my bill and offer me opportunities. I went to school to be a special educator. Now I have an MBA working in the childcare industry because of what the things did, what this industry has done for me. What an, you know, it's such a valuable resource.
Jackie?
Well, hello, everybody, and I apologize both for being late and having to jump off at 9:30, but I'm really delighted with all the people that are on. Hi, Mikhail. Nice to see you too, and everybody. And Robin, I love when you always talk about being a mom and your experience. It's really always really inspiring. And so I think there are two things that I just wanted to say. There is both the federal long-term solution that should be worked on. And I think we're in a position where I've been in the childcare world in New Hampshire, and both, as a director and as an advocate for over 30 years. And I've never had so much worry and so much hope at the same time. And so I think, I think working federally is probably going to be the long-term solution when our nation does say what Anne Grassie says, and Robin was saying, that really, honestly, babies all the way through, many countries do that to make sure, it's affordable to all families and there are great salaries. It's like a top-notch, thing to do and pays well. That's the federal solution. And I do believe, I used to think it would happen in my lifetime. I think it may happen in 5 to 10 years. Which is really exciting. I hope to live longer than that. But now I think in the meantime, we can come up with some really good New Hampshire solutions, things that'll help, basically put our thumb in the dike while we're waiting for the big federal solution, things like and I know Ann and others can talk about it, it's Celissa, this shared services idea. I know many of you have heard of it, this sharing an economy of scale. While programs remain independent, they can share their buying power. They can turn those benefits and savings back into their workforce and affordability for families. Really good things like that. There are, how interesting to have sort of not necessarily either back office sharing as well, where, you don't have to have a HR expert in all 10 places. You can have one that's shared. You can have a shared enrollment process. You can have, there's lots of things that could be done. And I think, a lot of programs did think they were in competition. They're all small businesses. At the same time, in this new world where you can't find qualified staff and you can't keep them, people are really ready to start saying they want to remain independent. There's a lot of value in that, but what are the ways that we can do this together so that, and I hear a lot in the state talking about, let's expand, let's expand, let's expand. Well, sure. If you've also already filled those 200 slots Cora was talking about that are already have furniture and electricity and rooms, and they just aren't filled with families because there's no staff. So looking at the whole. So thanks.
No, that's great. Thank you so much, Jackie. Just thinking a little bit about what you were saying and finding solutions. If maybe employers can't help financially sometimes, but are there any support services that you can think about that employers can assist to help parents find quality childcare?
Sorry, and Celissa, I know you know, but again, there are, one of the problems again is the availability and the long waiting lists that are there. However, employers, there's a variety of both one-on-one things that are really interesting. I mean, Jen can talk about this amazing idea in Harmony Homes. It's just so exciting in the sense of housing and childcare. But I can just give you an example. When I was a childcare director in Henniker, we had the local sawmill. It's a small business. The owner called me up and said, do you have any availability for a 3-year-old? I've got a potential employee here. And we happened to. And he goes, gee, can I keep calling you every time I've got, I said, yeah, sure you can. I said, and there's something called Childcare Aware of New Hampshire that many parents don't know about that helps connect them to openings. And also I said, I know the people in Hillsborough and the people in Hopkinton, and I could call them too. We started this just a connection with each other, where it helped me because I had openings at the time. And it also, he ended up putting it in his ad, I will help you find childcare. And 10 times as many people applied for the job. So there are those kinds of one-on-one innovative things. Also, many businesses do invest. We have a program, we have a donor group in the Monadnock United Way that's paying for some shared services work for a membership for people. There's a lot of different ways that businesses one-on-one as well as collectively could help.
I'll just elaborate a little bit more on what Jackie said, because I think whatever the business product is or services, if that could be extended to childcare businesses, either at cost or donated, that could also help childcare businesses free up resources that they can redirect to staff compensation and to families.
A really great idea. Thank you. Let me see. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Jen, but I think a lot of people are probably interested in hearing how your business is going and with Harmony Homes. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yep. So July 11th, we had our opening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We had our opening day for Harmony Homes. So John Randolph built an apartment complex with 10 apartments on their same site as their assisted living facility. So he was able to offer affordable housing for his employees. Inside of that, he left a space for childcare. So we opened a family group child care center with our newest franchisee, who lives in one of the apartments, very affordable rent, right on the Oyster River. And she runs a childcare for 9 children just next to her house, which is amazing. So she has affordable, housing, and there's on-site childcare. We established her childcare tuition rates are actually the same as the New Hampshire childcare scholarship rates. And we can really provide affordable childcare. And those scholarship rates are well below normal market rate for the Seacoast. So it's really a remarkable opportunity to provide housing, provide childcare, ensure that it's affordable. And it's really a creative solution for employers to think about, because I think as we grow in the industry and we're trying to reset, existing childcare centers have, these wonderful spaces, but anyone new coming to the industry is really struggling to find an appropriate space in a commercial center that makes sense. We have the most strict fire codes of any industry that exists out there. Sprinkler systems cost you can see Cora and Ann just like, yes. A sprinkler system costs $100,000. In traditional commercial spaces are not where you want childcare centers to be. I can't open in the strip mall because I don't have a playground. So, more residential style construction is really important, but having towns who support mixed use, that's like, it's more, you want a residential feel, but you need to have a commercial infrastructure. So we really have work to do within towns to support providing childcare in a non-commercial location. Funding for sprinkler system additions, because that's so costly. Like I said, it can be up to $100,000 for us. And then, family group childcare is a really nice alternative, which we're starting to capitalize on, that employers have the ability to maybe make an investment like John did, maybe purchase some real estate on their own. And we can help them identify opportunities to bring in a franchisee to live in that house affordably and run a childcare out of that house for specific employers. So it's kind of a different on-site childcare model, but it really gives you an investment opportunity as a business, and serves your client, your employees really well. So it's kind of a win-win. In this new model that we're developing. We're also looking at workforce housing. As towns are approving workforce housing and apartment complexes, can we do the same thing we did at Harmony Homes, which is leaving space inside of these developments for childcare and reserving them so that we aren't in that struggle for finding those commercial spaces. We're building them intentionally. But towns don't really have the mechanism for it, making those suggestions or adding those into their workforce housing requirements. I think it's kind of a mental shift that planning boards, zoning boards, and need to start thinking about, how as a town are we improving the childcare infrastructure for the town. I mean, I'm in Brentwood. We're very fortunate to be here. We're the only childcare center in Brentwood. Because the infrastructure doesn't support, purchase of commercial real estate for anyone else. We've been doing this 20 years. Exeter, is another struggle. It's a growing town, and there's so much demand and not enough infrastructure there as well. So really some innovative solutions. We're looking for, employer partners to help grow, this model that we've started to develop. And we want to come to the table with all these other childcare providers to help be part of the solution and some creative problem solving for how to get through this.
Thank you so much, Jen.
Do you want me to talk about some of the legislation that we're discussing as well?
Yeah, that would be great, actually.
So we have one legislative piece that we're really talking about, which is how we define childcare. So there's RSAs for what family childcare looks like, as well as center-based childcare. And this coming year, we have some legislative work to do to redefine family group childcare so that it can be, the person can live on site in the same property, but doesn't have to be like living in the same space. So you can have an apartment in a workforce housing complex with your childcare below, and you can still be considered family group childcare. Right now, the rule is that you have to live in the same space. They have to be contiguous. So by really broadening that rule, so it's just on site, I think it's going to really help us provide more out of the box opportunities for providing childcare infrastructure. The other thing that I just realized was that our childcare scholarship tuition rates are only updated every 2 years instead of every year, which is disconcerting because in a year like this, we're about 10% behind what we really need to be, well, more than 10%. It's really going to be an economic loss for childcare providers who are only charging based on the scholarship rates, because I mean, inflation's been crazy. So we need like 10-15% more than what we're getting. So it's really holding us back from earning additional revenue. And that's top down from the state. I've inquired like what RSA drives that. So maybe we can.
Jen, it follows the state budget, which is done on a biennium. You know, the budget.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It also
It's done
follows
for
the
2
market
years.
rate survey, which is done every 2 years. So it's done on a research that does happen every 2 years. That's why, yeah. But it's a good point.
Yeah, maybe we need to put an allowance for, you know, the second year has to have X percentage increase or something, because, you know, in years like this, it's really going to create additional strain for childcare businesses.
The other problem with the state scholarship is that the state only pays on attendance based reimbursements, where we've asked for enrollment based. You know, when you charge a full pay parent, they pay per week whether their child attends every day or not. The state doesn't do that. You have to put the hours in, and they only pay based on the attendance of the child. They have 3 rates: a part-time, a half-time, and a full-time, and you have to hit those hours. So even if a family is qualified for full-time care, an illness or an absence can put their child only in for half-time reimbursement, which does not help our providers at all. So we did have a bill that looked at full enrollment based payments. They're still considering it. We did a pilot from March to May this year so they could figure out what it would cost. We haven't had any results from that pilot yet. So that's the other problem with the enrollment based. It's always following behind. It's always behind the market rate survey. It's always behind the budget. You know, that's a struggle. And we at Rochester, we try to keep our rates for full pay families right at the state reimbursement rate. So we're always 2 years behind in raising our rates. And this year, it's going to be a struggle without the ability to do that. Yeah, the state puts a lot of roadblocks in our way that they could help with.
Natalie, can I jump in for a sec?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Are you working with the BIA, Business and Industry Association? My suggestion is, if you're not working with the BIA, someone should call Mike Skelton. He's the new president and CEO of the BIA. Mike was my employee for many, many years at the Manchester Chamber of Commerce and Government Affairs. And if you're not familiar with the BIA, they are a lobbyist entity, a statewide lobbyist entity for businesses in the state of New Hampshire. They're obviously for many generations very politically connected, but this is a business issue. This is an economic development issue. It always has been, and we're finally recognizing it as that. And I think that Mike would hear you and hear this argument in terms of them as a business representative. I wonder what you think, Ben.
They did hear us. They just did a tour of listening sessions around the state last month.
Oh, good.
And the top issue for almost every employer in the room, the one I attended was in the Seacoast area. was housing and childcare. I mean, housing kind of beat out childcare for the most pressing issue for employers.
They're so interrelated, truthfully, but
They are.
Yeah.
So they were looking for items to put into their priorities for this upcoming legislative session.
If I were you, I would call Mike Skelton, who happens to be a dad of a young child. And I would call Mike Skelton and ask for a private meeting with him to further advocate for this cause as an agenda for the 2023 session. The BIA should be involved in this, and the BIA should be involved in this. I could go on and on. Sorry.
It looks like Celissa put in the chat that Jackie and team of others are connecting with BIA, so that's good.
Yeah, I'd love to just elaborate a little bit more if I can. The team that Jackie is connecting and working in a pretty robust way on a lot of this is in large part due to some significant funding that we received this year from United Way, Endowment for Health, Northeast Delta Dental, New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, and others to sort of develop or create this team of people from the Community Loan Fund, from the New Hampshire SBDC, also Early Learning New Hampshire and CELA, to provide business support to childcare programs. And some of the things that we're really working to get out there in front of childcare providers is that something, for example, like the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund's Welcome Home program, which is affordable home ownership. There are some things in the state that exist that if we promote this to the workforce, it could really make a huge difference for them. I was kind of wowed when I heard one of the examples that Julie McConnell shared, where a recent story where they got someone into home ownership through the Welcome Home program, and their housing costs went down significantly from when they went from renting to ownership through this program. And I wanted to also circle back to something that Jen was talking about related to the requirements, zoning and code requirements in our state. And I want to share an example, and this is something that the additional funding is helping us to get out there to childcare programs and help them with. But one of the CELA resources that I took advantage of when I was a long-term executive director was connected to relocating our programs into better space. We had 3 early childhood sites in the Seacoast area. And we hit a roadblock that similar to what Jen described related to life safety code compliance. And even though we were only, our facility renovation was only going to provide us with a total of 3,000 square feet, we were being asked to put in $100,000 sprinkler system, which was probably, it would double the cost of the project, or almost double the cost of the project. And when I was concerned that the project wasn't going to be able to move forward, I discovered that one of our shared services partners, Great North Property Management, and Lou Gargiulo, had experience navigating that kind of thing. And they helped us get to a point where we had approval for a $30,000 sprinkler system, which was reasonable. That was very doable. And it's really because childcare can fall in this category, which is, complete commercial code requirement, but we didn't have a 20,000 square foot building, and $100,000 sprinkler system was really overkill. And so we needed expertise to help us speak the right language and work with the code compliance folks. So there can be solutions out there if we tap into the right expertise and we make that available to childcare businesses to learn about and tap into.
It's a very difficult world to navigate because each town and city has their own. Every time there's a change of a fire marshal in Rochester, it ends up costing us over $20,000. Because they come in and they see something different. The sprinkler system that we just had replaced a system that the city helped us pay for and the fire department had signed off on. But the new fire marshal said it wasn't adequate. And there's just nowhere to go when you're up against the city. They're holding your license in their hand. And every time there has been a change of fire marshal in this city, we have paid a huge price as a small nonprofit business with a with a big building that takes a lot of energy and money to keep running. And it's 256 towns, guys, that each have their own fire chief who says, you know, I know Mary Ann Barter, who runs Merrimack Valley Child Care, she owns a couple in different towns. And she's got one fire marshal who comes in and is very picky about everything. And in one small town where she's got a center, he drives by and waves, says, hello, I'll get your paperwork into you soon. And it's like, there's no standard, there's no consistency. And it's very hard to operate within consistent town rules. It just makes life very difficult.
And can I say something to that? I'm Erin and John Kniffer. I own Kids Culture Childcare. I have 3 different centers. We're actually in the process, we're closing today actually for, we just purchased the old Dover Children's Center in Dover. So, but I wanted to speak to the fire sprinkler systems. We have a location in Barrington, and we have 149 that we're licensed for at that location. And we just put in a sprinkler system in that location, and it did cost us over $100,000. But we did get, like what Ann said, whenever there's a new fire marshal, there's new rules. And the current fire marshal that is in Barrington, we had some disagreements with. So we actually went to the state fire marshal, and we got
variances,
a variance and a whole bunch of different things, and they were fabulous to deal with. So the city fire marshal is not necessarily the end all be all. So I would go above their head and talk to the state fire marshal, because they were fantastic to deal with. And we have sprinkler systems in all of our buildings, all 3 of them. So don't always just listen, not that the city fire marshals are bad, but if they're all varying and they're different from city to city, then definitely go to the state fire marshal, because they were fantastic. And we're actually getting our sprinkler system is finally done. And it took us over a year and a half.
Yeah.
A year and a half to get it put into our Barrington Center.
Because the code is the code. And it's based on how they interpret the code. So the state fire marshal is like the final say of how the code is interpreted.
Right, and different city fire marshals all interpret it differently. So if you don't necessarily agree with their interpretation, then go to the state, because they were great with us and we really appreciated it. So that's just my 2 cents.
Congratulations on your win there. You have to be real careful when you're dealing with the politics of small town or even big town. I would not want the fire department in Rochester upset with us, because that can cause you a whole other set of headaches, because they talk to other department heads as well, and you have your health inspector to deal with. So it's a tightrope to walk sometimes.
I absolutely agree with you. And the fire marshal in Barrington is not our best friend, but we have a great, thriving
relationship with the state fire.
Yeah, and we have a thriving center in Barrington, and we're really glad, because if not, then we wouldn't be able to have our center there. And we're able to service a lot of families in the Barrington community because we pushed through it and didn't take no for an answer.
So Alyssa, this might be a question for you. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to join the last call when you joined us, but it was my understanding that there were some conversations between Early Learning New Hampshire and Commissioner Caswell about how Gopher funds could possibly use to help address this child care crisis. Did anything come up with?
Yeah, I wish Jackie was on. She could speak to that, because she's been really in the weeds working on that. So there is work underway to make a request that would, first of all, include workforce stipends that would, I think, make a real difference in helping us retain the people we have and attract more people. And so that's one area of focus that's underway. And then there's sort of a part 2 to that. I think there are a lot of folks who are really want to prioritize workforce stipends or bonuses. Again, recruitment and retention bonuses. A lot of states have implemented something like that, and it's been effective. And then a separate ask after that would be really focused on some of the capacity building and the infrastructure. And I think, there's the decision was made not to put those two things together at this time, because the workforce stipends and bonuses are so desperately needed that we really want to see that be the first priority investment, and not have Gopher perhaps decide to invest in something that's going to take a longer time to show fast impact.
Sorry, I'm taking many notes on everything that everyone is saying. As you know, SRPC, one of our economic development priorities in our comprehensive economic development strategy is childcare. So we are really interested in any way that we can help. And we do have relationships with businesses in our region too, as does, the other regional planning commission. So we want to pass this message along to businesses and create like this bridge between what needs to be done and what businesses can do.
Yeah, and I think if we can separate, have two lists going, if you will, the list and the bucket that is what can have very quick, immediate impact and make a difference ASAP, and then what is sort of longer range and will take a little bit more time and will have greater impact eventually, but can't show the ROI overnight kind of thing.
Any other questions or comments from the group?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
I can't say enough about the State Early Learning Alliance that we have in the Seacoast area, that we started with probably 10 childcare agencies coming together to see how we can save money running the business in order to provide quality in the classroom. And that's the driving force behind SELA. And it has given so many agencies a little relief in their, their back of the house costs. I know here at Rochester Child Care Center, we take advantage of the great price for propane gas. We have an electric rate that is below market rate. We have taken advantage in the past of the food source as a buying co-op for our food, our meals. We have a waste pickup that's a good rate because of SELA. They have credit card discounts for using a credit card machine. There are many back of the house cost savings that the Alliance offers our as well as training opportunities for our staff. We have a partnership with New Hampshire Jobs. Celissa has been so instrumental in getting so many of our staff college credits. There's a partnership between New Hampshire Jobs training money and the community colleges in the state to offer good rates, and the employees are not allowed to pay a penny. The employer picks up the cost of the class and the cost of the books. We have several employees here who probably have almost their associate's degree and not a bit of student loan, and they're continuing on that road. So the and the SELA network meets weekly. We meet on a Zoom call weekly and support each other. And when one's got a problem, there's 25 people working on that problem to see if we can find a solution. And we learn from that and share all of that learning. So the Alliance is one of the best things to come along for early childhood. And we did it ourselves. We created it from the ground up. We met a woman named Louise Stoney who talked about shared services, and we decided first in the country, because they sent us to conferences around the country to see how people were doing shared services. And in most childcare instances, it was because somebody was going under. There was something bad about to happen and a merger was created. Here in the Seacoast, there was nothing bad happening to any of us. There just wasn't anything good happening either. So we kind of put it together. And, you know, one of our boards way back in 2005, I think, we had a board meeting of all of our groups together. And he said, this is a way to buy toilet paper cheaply. And everybody got that idea because everybody has to buy toilet paper. So from that beginning has come this great organization that has offered so much to people. We even have a telehealth, which includes mental health care, that's offered very reasonably for our members. We're now putting out a flyer that offers our families some cost savings on insurance, cost savings on AAA costs. You know, it's just really turning into a great benefit for the child care centers and their families and their staff. So I can't say enough about the Alliance. If you get to support the SELA Alliance in any way, that it would be a benefit to everybody.
I think I want to just elaborate a little bit more on what Ann said. I think Ann, great job sort of articulating the many ways that Rochester Child Care Center has tapped into and benefited from this shared service approach. I think, you know, as we developed this, we also recognized that partnering with a couple of key players, if you will, or businesses would help us bring more to bear for the field. And I see this as an example of what can one entity do that can then be shared and made available to all programs so that all programs aren't trying to do it on their own and kind of duplicate efforts. And we decided in our startup phase of this work that having a national partner would be invaluable, and that's CCA Global Partners, which is where I work now. And so we tap into the scale of the co-op model and what they've brought to bear for many other business industries. And then we selected a local partner as well, and that was Great North Property Management. And that was because that business brought local things to bear that we couldn't tap into nationally. And altogether, it means that individual independent childcare programs can tap into this economy of scale that they could never accomplish on their own. And one of the things that now that I'm working for CCA Global and still in my very minimal part-time connection with Early Learning New Hampshire and CELA, I would love to see us work on adding more cost savings. You know, what are the other things that businesses, childcare businesses are spending a lot of money on and can tap into and save money on? And, you know, I used to think when I was a director, all right, we have to have our trash, we have to have our dumpsters empty, we have diapers in them, but we don't want to pay more than we have to for that. Like, why spend more than you have to? Pay as little as possible for good quality service and to get the service you need, and then reinvest all that savings in the things that make the biggest difference for children and families and teachers.
We have a quiet group today from our economic development stakeholders.
Yeah, hi, can I just interject here? This is Sally Tobias, I'm from Durham.
Yeah.
I'm really intrigued by this, this thought of building into zoning code the necessity in a mixed use project or in a housing project to add in a childcare space. We're in the process now of redefining our workforce housing and writing up some legislation for our zoning code as to where we can put it. And it never occurred to me to include childcare space until you mentioned it. And it's like a complete no-brainer. And we've had conversations with Maggie and John Randolph, and which they have done. And I'm just really intrigued by it. And we're trying to open up some of our zoning areas to include, and rather than just commercial space, but to include mixed use with residential. And we often include, you know, in the process, the ask of let's have a restaurant there, have some services that are going to be used by our local community. But the reality is we could say we need to make sure there's a childcare space that's included in that space. It's a no-brainer, and I really I think I came away, what I'm coming away with today is that's probably one of the brightest points. And I really thank you for, somebody said that. I'm not even sure who said it earlier, but I think I'm gonna bring that to
Yeah, and
our
she's
table
amazing.
and see if we can discuss it. Yeah, this is a great idea, and it's makes complete sense. It goes along with just that old you live and you work and your children are provided for all within a community. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. Thank you.
You know, I once visited a child care center over in Westmoreland on the western part of the state, and it was a butler building built in an industrial park. And you would not think that would be a great place for children. But when you walked inside this beautiful child care center, it was a fairyland inside. It was fantasy. It was wonderful. The people who ran it were wonderful. And I had a dream once. I tried to talk to the economic developer in Rochester once about giving us a space in the Rochester Industrial Park for a building. And my dream was to have a building big enough to build to take care of children. And the back end of it I would lease out as a breakfast lunch spot, because the industrial park had no place for people to go get lunch either. And I thought that could help support our childcare. I couldn't get the economic development person to see the value. This was about 12 years ago, to see the value of childcare at the industrial park. But I still think that's a viable, and towns and cities should consider that when they're looking at their where industry is, where people work. Where you work is a good place to have children, because it's easy access for parents. It provides a service for all the employers in that industrial area. And I just think that's still a model that would work. Chris used to, here at the Rochester Child Care, she used to laugh at me about my center with the restaurant on the back. And that came from a gentleman who was on the Regional Commission for the United Way here. He said when Saffron Albany went into Rochester Industrial Park, he tried to convince Subway to go up there and build a spot, and they wouldn't. And because there was nowhere for people to actually leave the park and get lunch quickly and get back to work. And I said, well, they would, if you build me my building for children and we rent out the Subway area, you're solving two problems with one stone. And I still think it's a plan that could work.
Yeah, I think it's a great plan. It makes total sense. I think it's just a matter of getting people to think outside of the box they've been living in for decades. And you have to start talking about it. So I might be knocking on your door to come and talk and convince other people that have to vote for this. So I think it's a great idea.
Thanks, Sally.
Come anytime, Sally, and bring anybody you want to bring. We are great at talking.
Oh, I got you. Thanks.
So, I see your hand is up.
Yeah. So to Anne's point, it's funny, Anne, because I've always had a similar vision. On one side of my school, I would like to have like a doggy daycare, and the other side, like a take-home meal, like a make and take kind of thing, so that it was really, we're all about building a community, and I think we've lost focus of what it means to build communities and what an infrastructure needs as part of a community. So as we're really looking at the workforce housing, situation inside of the state of New Hampshire, I think we really need to look at building inclusive communities of what services do we need inside of these communities, and bringing it closer to home, so that, there are places to eat, stay, play, work, childcare on site, so people aren't having to go to find all these resources. If we really start to do some strategic planning around bringing all these things into one place, right, it's really going to bring.
There are some partnerships that are easy to form. We actually had a conversation a few years back with the Stratford County homemakers who had a need for a day out program for elderly. And we talked about collaborating and building a building that would be childcare on one side and elderly assisted day out program on the other, which would be a perfect match of two communities that have a lot to offer each other. They thought we could they had the land and they wanted us to build the building. Well, we didn't have $1 million at the time to build the building, so it never went anywhere. But that's another, we're having an aging population that needs care more and more. And to put the childcare world together with the elder care world is can create some economies of scale. There's a big need for both of those services. So that's another unlikely partnership that people could look at around the state.
Sally, I did leave my email in the chat for you. I would love to talk a little bit more if you want to have some conversations around that. And I'm sure Anne and Cora would, happily kind of participate in those conversations as well.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks. I'll grab that. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I think we're really kind of taking a look at, just like I said, rebuilding communities and not just siloed, issues anymore. It's how to tackle the whole thing.
We're coming up to 9 o'clock pretty soon. So I'm going to open it up for questions one more time or any comments. Mikhail, were you going to say something?
Yes, thank you for hosting this. Very, very timely. I would say that this meeting and the notes that come from it will be thoroughly read. I've heard some excellent ideas here. Certainly childcare with elder care. Great idea. I also want to thank Erin and her team for having the wherewithal to fight through it and kind of build partnerships where necessary. That's important also, and the comments that I've heard from Jen and Anne, this is outstanding work, and being able to work with the Gopher team. So I'll be going over these notes also, but well done, everyone.
And before we jump off, just a really quick thing, because we do disseminate information and resources to businesses in our region, and we have childcare businesses as well. So I'm just curious, what can we do? Like, where can we get information from about all of these resources that you guys are talking about that we can send over and pass these along to our business? Is there like a good place, or is it sort of just doing our research on our own?
I'm not sure.
The Child Care Advisory Council meets on a every other month basis, but they're a good resource for what's going on in childcare around the state. They're a legislatively enacted group. The legislature created it. Mm-hmm. We are supposed to advise the Department of Health and Human Services along with the governor. They don't listen to us much, but we do speak out, and we do have a large group on our Zooms. We're over 130 people who meet on a bi-monthly basis, but Early Learning New Hampshire also keeps us meeting in between those meetings as well. So it's a frequent conversation that's going on across the state. So if anyone had any questions, the Child Care Advisory Council would be a great place to get an answer, or to pose a question that you want an answer to. And they put you in touch with the right people.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. This has been more than valuable to learn and hear from you guys, the experts, and really see what's going on. Yeah, very interesting discussion, as Jenny says. So hopefully we'll be in touch. And like I said, lots of valuable notes have come from this meeting to help us shape what our next steps should probably be. So thank you.